In this lesson I'm going to talk about dominant chords and the scales that you can use when you improvise over them. I've been getting some questions about how that worked and what options you have, and I thought I would do a lesson where I would demonstrate a few of them, the more common ones. It's also in a way a demonstration of how in jazz you don't only improvise with what you're playing, so just the notes that you're playing in the solo, but also the harmony itself. So you're actually free to change the choice of sound on the dominant while you're soloing, or any other chord essentially. So I'm going to demonstrate this on dominants that resolve, so it's all going to be put in a cadence, and the cadence I'm going to use is 2-5-1 in the key of B flat. So C minor 7, F7, and B flat major 7. I'm just going to go over each of the different choices that I'm demonstrating, play the chords, and then play the scale that fits with it, and a line that sort of demonstrates how that specific scale sounds. I might also try to describe a bit what, to me anyway, is typical for that sound, and how I sort of see it in a harmonical context. The first example is the most natural choice. It's not changing anything. So on our 2-5-1 in B flat, we're just going to be using the B flat major scale, so that would be F mixolydian. So you get this scale. Yeah, the sound of this is the sound of a dominant with a 9 and a 13 and no alterations. And a line on top of this could be something like so what I'm playing in that line isn't really, I mean, there's not really anything harmonically very remarkable happening, because it's just B flat major, all of it. But that said, you can still make some interesting lines. The part of the line that's on the dominant is based around this arpeggio and this arpeggio, and they're open triad voicings, or drop 2 triad voicings. So one is a C minor, the other one is an F major triad, and I use those triads quite a lot because they have a lot of nice large intervals, and if you just string large intervals together, then usually it's kind of hard to make it sound really coherent, and using these arpeggios it's pretty easy to do. So for that they're very practical, and my point is more with this that you can actually still make really good lines without really changing the harmony. So the second example is using the harmonic minor scale on the dominant. So in this case that means that we're using the B flat harmonic minor scale over the F7 flat 9 chord that it's going to be. What that is actually borrowing the dominant from minor. So that means that this is the sound you would expect to on a dominant if the whole song was in B flat minor, and it's also the first choice for a dominant scale if you were playing a minor cadence, in fact. So if you have a dominant that resolves to a minor chord, then harmonic minor is usually the thing you want to play on it. Okay, so let's just play the chords. So for this cadence, I'm playing an F7 with a flat 9 and a 5th, just sort of to emphasize the fact that it's not the altered scale, but it does actually still have a fifth. And the scale that could go with this would be something like... where you kind of clearly hear the sound of that large interval within the scale, which is sort of the giveaway for harmonic minor. That's the thing that at least I always tend to hear it on. So when you improvise on this, probably the thing that we all know from rock and heavy metal is that harmonic minor has a diminished arpeggio. So that's something that is worth using on top of the dominant. So let's see, so if I play a line over this cadence, that's going to be something like... Another thing that maybe I should mention is also that when I'm working on learning a new scale and getting used to the sound of it, I think I find it really handy that I can find a chord that's really typical for that sound, so that I can play that and hear the chord in the context, and in that way have a better idea of how my lines should sound, and I get a little bit more an idea of which notes I want to aim for and emphasize in the lines, just to really sort of bring out the sound of that scale. That's something I use really a lot. And I also hear often that saxophone players and trumpet players will sit at a piano to do exactly that, to check out sounds. So that's definitely something, and it's fairly easy to do on guitar. We know how to play chords anyway. That's something you should do if you're working on these different scales. Let's take the next example. So in this cadence I'm going to use the altered scale on the dominant. The altered scale, as you might know, is in fact the melodic minor scale half a step above the root of the dominant. So if I play the chords, it's going to sound something like this. And the scale would be something like this. And if I play a line on it, that's going to be something like this. And when I'm using the altered scale, so as I mentioned, it's in this case on an F7, it's in fact the F sharp melodic minor, and one of the chords in melodic minor, in F sharp melodic minor, is a B7 chord, which is the tritone substitution of F, and I use that quite a lot when I'm improvising on it. It's a nice way to sort of start off getting ideas for lines. So what I'm doing, and I was also doing in the example, is actually playing a B7 arpeggio and an F sharp minor triad, which are both sort of closely related to the B7, but they work really well as material for the F7 if you want that altered sound. I guess the most important thing that you have in the sound of the altered scale is that you have the flat 5 and the sharp 9 and the flat 9. Another thing is also that when I play the scale like this, I'm in fact playing most of a whole tone scale, so it kind of has a little bit of that sound too, so there's very definitely something augmented about it. But of course the augmented triad is in there too, so that's also something to sort of check out when making lines with this scale. Okay, so let's look at the diminished scale. So for the diminished scale, the cadence is going to sound like this. So the chord that I'm using for this is an F7 with a natural 13th and a flat 9. So this thing where you have alterations and then the 13 is kind of major sounding, so it doesn't really sound like it's coming from a major. It's something that I guess I tend to connect with diminished sound. The diminished scale is a symmetrical scale, which means that you can move stuff around, in this case in minor thirds, and it's still going to stay in the scale, which is, in a way, it's an easy way to make licks and compose lines, but for me, I don't really like those kind of lines too much, so I try to avoid doing that. So the melodies I make are usually, they're actually composed of triads out of this scale that I try to connect in melodic ways. Let's try and play the scale first. So this is the sound of it. If I play a line, that should be something like... And as I said, the line is composed out of a D major triad and a B major triad. So I guess I would do a lot of stuff like connecting triads, and in that way I'm using the fact that it's symmetrical, because I know that I have like an F major triad and an A flat and a B and a D triad, and then I just make something up with that. But I kind of try to stay away from stuff that sounds like, because that somehow it's too predictable melodically for my taste most of the time anyway. And usually you don't really have time to repeat it anyway, so it's not that practical. Okay, let's take the last example. That's the whole tone scale. The chord that fits with the whole tone scale would be this one, which is an F7 with a 9 and a sharp 5. So that if I play that in a context, you're going to get these chords. And one way of playing the whole tone scale would be this. Probably you can tell like the similarity with the alto scale that I talked about. Okay, let's try and play a line with it. So what I'm doing with this line is actually just playing the triads that are in it, the augmented triads. It's not a scale that I've been using really a lot, but lately I found it kind of nice, maybe because I didn't use it so much before. So I started experimenting with it quite a bit. It's also a nice scale to sort of put on top of other things where you have an augmented sound or triad somewhere in the chord. So if you're playing for a long time on some sort of major minor thing like this, A major minor, you can sort of put that on top of it, and it will, regardless of the fact that it doesn't actually mesh with the root, it will sort of live a life on its own. And still, because of the strong augmented sounding thing, will work. What else? Yeah, I was also in the example in the line I played. voicing as an arpeggio. I think of some of the other lessons I've talked about different kinds of chord voicings, and a lot of those you can actually also just use as arpeggios. In the case of shell voicings and drop 2 voicings, they can be a little bit difficult to play, of course, but you already have them in your left hand, so it's just a matter of figuring out how I'm going to do this with my right hand, and then you have a new idea to work on. So maybe that's something for another lesson. So that was a few options for scales that you can use on dominance in a cadence. I didn't really concern myself with all the dominants that don't resolve. Of course there are a lot of those, but maybe I can sort of try to work on that subject in another lesson. But anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that you can use this stuff and maybe get some new ideas for new harmonies, and also for new melodic ideas in your solos. If you like the lesson, then please like it and subscribe to my channel. If you have suggestions for other things that I could do lessons on, then feel free to leave comments here on the video, or connect with me on Facebook or Twitter or Google+, and let me know via that. So thanks for watching.